Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to talk about the rewrite trap. So we talk a lot at the show about rewrites and why they fail and how they fail, but we haven't talked about why rewrites become a trap. Like why once you start a rewrite, it becomes a trap that is very hard to escape. And obviously it's not a physical trap, right? It's not actually holding you in and preventing you from getting out, but in a lot of ways it feels that way. And so the first aspect of why rewrites are a trap is that something that we've talked about before is risk is very delayed because delivery is very delayed. If you aren't expected to resolve anything for 6 months or 6 weeks or whatever, that entire period of time or most of that period of time is gone before anybody checks back in to see how you're doing. And so, if you want to go with a quicksand or peat bog metaphor, right? You walk all the way in.
I love a good peat bog metaphor.
Doesn't everyone love a good peat bog metaphor? You walk, you get into the quagmire. You walk in one step at a time. And it's not until you're in the middle of this thing that you realize, oh, now I can't get out. You could have gotten out in the beginning, but it didn't occur to you to stop. And so that's sort of the first aspect of what makes it a trap is because the releases, but you don't realize you're in a quagmire with a rewrite until it's time to start talking about releases. Because the central part is, okay, I'm going to do a 6-week rewrite. No one is going to check up on you until like week 4. Like, hey, are you looking good?
Yep.
So have you had that where everything, Isaac, have you, in your rewrite history, have you seen that everything seems okay and then suddenly it's not, where the team is plodding along?
Yeah, but I think it's kind of trickier too from the perspective of the little guy on the team, like the
Mm-hmm.
one of the engineers working on the project. Um, because you're right that we experience it like everything's okay, that it's not. But that's that's how we know. Like we basically don't really know how to guide the ship because from our perspective, what's happening is we're just given work to do every day
Mm-hmm.
and we're doing the work and it's hard
Mm-hmm.
work.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like progress to us because we see every day what we're doing and how we're like actually moving towards what we think is the goal and how we think is progressing correctly. We don't see that big picture too. Like you say that there's check in, like, how's it going at the 4 week mark or something.
Mm-hmm.
For us, it's check in every day because we see it. Like I've
Right.
worked on a rewrite before that failed.
You're working
And it
hard.
was months and months and months. We're working hard. It seems like, things must be going well because I'm working hard, and we're doing that slow death march, right? We're
Right.
working really hard to get in the middle of the peat bog.
Right. Yeah, you're working. It gets progressively harder the further you go in to
Yeah,
keep going, right? You see the far shore, you think, but the peat
right.
bog gets more boggy as you walk deeper deeper into it.
Yeah, and it's not until I think some of the decisions are deferred too. Like you might actually early on run into, hey, this actually seems like a really tricky thing to port. As you're going through and trying to find pieces you have to rewrite,
Mm-hmm.
you encounter an old edge case that wasn't considered at the beginning of the project. And
Right.
they're like, oh, okay, we'll put it on the backlog. We'll handle that in a bit. Or you'll find some
Mm-hmm.
other kind of way to kind of like classify the fact, oh, we can't forget to port this thing over. And it's not until towards the end that you realize, oh, well, we're 80% there, but the last
Mm-hmm.
20% is 80% of the work, right?
Right.
And it's actually quite a bit of work. And sometimes uh, actually kind of undermines all your original effort because a lot of the stuff that had to be ported was the stuff that should have been considered to begin with before what you worked on.
Right. It's all about the delayed response and the delayed release. Because if you had gotten the important stuff or the stuff that's value, you've gotten that all the way into production, you would have learned something and it would be adding value. And that would have been I guess in this case, the causeway that you could use to keep yourself from sinking into the mud. But because nothing's been released, you don't realize that you've got a whole lot of nothing. I think there's a quote from, I think, Seth Godin. He said something to the effect of, if you want to get unity, do the easy thing first. If you want the project to succeed, do the hardest thing first.
Oh, yeah. I 100% agree with that. And I think that was a mistake of actually the one of the rewrites that you and I were on
Hmm.
that failed was the proof of concept for moving this email sending engine over was to move the first easiest email sending piece over. It was
Hmm.
like this kind of non-personalized email, so emails that don't get the hello first name and the template replacement stuff. It was like a one-off send that had none of that. It was the easiest thing to do. The hard thing to do is this personalization engine,
Hmm.
custom field replacement engine, and et cetera, et cetera. But that wasn't delivered first. We spec'd out the whole project, and maybe the idea was, oh, we should get momentum first to show that we can
Yeah,
deliver in
that's the idea.
pieces. But instead, we delivered something that by itself is nothing more than a very difficult, fancy way of doing a simple sin that we don't, who cares? And if we had
Right. It didn't
started
add any
with, oh,
new
we're solving
value.
the main, right. If we started with this thing can actually send the bread and butter of the company, which is
Yeah.
personalized campaigns to people, and then proved that, then the rest of it would have been a lot easier to deliver, I think. But in general, you'd be DC shipping. You'd be iterating on different pieces of the application that you're trying to improve or modernize rather than like rewriting the entire thing. And the whole point is to break it apart into pieces instead of shipping it as one huge project.
So that's one aspect of the rewrite trap, the fact that you don't realize you're in the trap for so long. The second aspect is there's a concept in neuroscience called the sunk cost fallacy. It's one of the
Hmm.
main human foibles is humans are really bad at looking at something and saying, well, this isn't going to pay out. They say, oh, well, I put this much money in, therefore I need to keep going.
Yeah.
It's called,
You dig your heels in.
right. It's the sunk cost fallacy. Back in 2004, John Kerry had been a very vocal anti-war critic of the Vietnam War, right? His whole thing was, how do you ask someone to be the last person to die for a war that was a mistake? When people are like, well, we've invested so much time and effort and lives into this war. And John Kerry's
Hmm.
response was, how do you ask someone to die for a war that you know was a mistake? Like, how do you ask someone to be the last one? It's a sunk cost fallacy of, well, we've invested this much, we must keep going. Because
Hmm.
otherwise, that means that everything we invested up so far is wrong
Yeah.
or it's a mistake. And
It's admitting a mistake.
it's admitting a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
not necessarily admitting the mistake because if you say, we started this thing and we thought there was a 50-50 chance, we put some money in, and now, or we thought there was a 10% chance, but it would pay out 20-1, right? So we took a lot, we're betting on a long shot, and now it's not going to pay out. If you, like, as soon as you realize it's not going to pay out, you cut it, then that's fine. But the sunk cost fallacy is even if you know that you're betting on long shots, like I've got 10 long shots going and I just need one of them to succeed. It's very hard as a human being to cut the other nine. Like when you realize that they're
Yeah.
not going to work. And so a rewrite is a long shot. It's
Yeah.
it's a Hail Mary, it's a long shot, and it's very hard to cut those just because we're humans. And so certainly if you tell the team, hey, look, we need a we should always be looking to fold. We should always be looking to, for a reason that we cancel this rewrite, you're not going to have a very happy team.
Yeah, that's an interesting tie-in actually, because it's not just a technical decision at that point. You're playing
Hmm.
against biology and the human brain and its want to keep going. Even I still think in my head it's like admitting a mistake, even if
Hmm.
you're saying it's not technically framed that way. But that's kind of the way I see it. It's
Well,
like
it depends when
I'm willing
you.
to sink. I'm willing to sink this amount into this project, and I know this is the way we should go. And then like later you go, I have to get a leadership and say, actually, I think this is not the best solution.
Well, so it.
That is what you have to uh, combat.
Well, there's a couple of points on there. One, if you
Mhm.
go into it with saying, "Hey, this is a long shot, and these are the conditions that we think are going to happen, and if we're not making this, then we should cut it." Then, when you go into it, you can cut it without feeling like it's a mistake because you made a bet.
Yeah.
But in all of my time, I've never walked into a rewrite where people said, "This is the bet we're making, and this is this is the failure case and this is when we'll know to cut it, or like these are the goals.
Yeah.
I
I
mean, even
think,
on
yeah, I think, no, I think that's just, that's just a good way to phrase it. Um, because if you just go ahead and give people permission, essentially, to say, we know this is a bad, at any point, if you want to flip the breaker here and,
Mhm.
pull out, then we can do that. Everyone should just call that out. That's a much easier thing to bridge than someone saying, this project's going to work. I know it. I'm putting my whole career on the line for this project.
Mhm.
Because then they'll never admit it. But
They never will.
I think that's a really great way to approach anything going forward. Any project in general. It's not necessarily a rewrite, but just a project that you're thinking. Let's say it's a new feature, not a big rewrite.
Mhm.
New feature you want to spec out, and you go into it and say, "Hey, our hypothesis is that this feature is going to bring this kind of traffic and help out in this way." Blah blah blah. But if we're wrong, then, we should see metrics early on that kind of show that, and then we'll switch gears and switch directions. That way we don't put more resources into this. People do that all the time with analytics, trying to A/B test things. Or even if you're getting into the feature, then something else happens. Like AI gets released. And you're like, well,
Yeah,
wait a
things have
minute.
changed.
We
The
should make an
landscape has
AI
changed.
product. Because now AI can do this. We were mid feature on this other thing that that maybe AI solves in a much easier way. We should pump the brakes and maybe switch gears. Framing it from that perspective to give people permission to say, hey, I think we should stop this direction without making it seem like they're not on board, I think is a really great way to facilitate kind of healthy direction and communication.
And that feeds back into the idea of you need to release early, you need to release often. One,
Hmm.
so that you get some value out of the thing and you get some feedback from the actual market. But two, with a rewrite, if you are in an all or nothing rewrite and it's been 6 months and now all of a sudden you're realizing it's going to be nothing, then it's nothing. You have to go back to this thing you hated before. Where if you were thesis shipping and you were releasing little bits for 6 months, and all of a sudden management says,
Right.
hey, the landscape has shifted. We don't want to invest as much time and money into making things better anymore. You say, okay, it's that sucks. But look, we've done all this stuff. All the things that we've made better are still made better. It's still in
Yeah.
production. And so the cost of stopping is so much lower.
Yeah. It's like in video games where you've got your you you take or you save the game every so often. I guess a lot of them auto save these days. But back in the day, you'd have your little save checkpoint. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
nice to
check.
be able to go back to the save checkpoint and not start the whole level over, right?
Right, yes, checkpoints versus the old Nintendo where God help you if you're on Super Mario Brothers level 9 and you've gotta start over.
Yep. That's what you go back to. And everyone, it kills momentum when you have to go, oh, we have to start from here. I've quit games before because I'm like, I'm not doing that again. But if you give me a
I
little
have
checkpoint, I'll
there
keep
there
going
are a
from
few
there.
games where one of the last levels is like a 30, 40-minute level, and by the 3rd time I tried it, I was like, I'm
Hmm.
done."
And take that to company scale where that's a 6 month project and you have to go back and toss all of that. That might just
Mhm.
be, you're like, all right, I'm done here.
Right, and that leads into the sort of the next aspect of the trap, right? So we're talking about it's hard to cancel the trap, it's hard to cancel because one, feels like it's admitting that you were wrong. Two, there's just the sunk cost fallacy. But and three, you have to start over, like the throwing things away. But that leads into number four, which is because in a lot of rewrites, especially ones that you and I have been on, there's a social aspect of, okay, this stuff is terrible, and I'm giving the developers an out for now,
Yeah.
and they're going to work on something great, and they're going to be happy, and it's letting them blow off steam and keeping them in the company, and they're going to be happy and we're going to be happy. If you have an all or nothing rewrite and that gets canceled or has to stop, those developers are all the way back at the beginning.
Hmm.
And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like in rewrites that you and I have been involved in, when the rewrite got canceled, everyone left within 6 months.
There are a few people, one or two people that stayed, I think. But yeah,
Okay.
I think Yeah, 90% of the team left. I think the people who stay were people who are just, like, longtime loyal people at the company.
That's fair. But yeah, like canceling a rewrite, having a rewrite, part of the trap, and this is a two-sided trap, is it's very likely that everyone involved or most of the people
Mhm,
involved in the rewrite are now on a short time basis with the company because either the rewrite succeeds, which almost never happens, but when it does happen, that is something that people put on their resumes and go get a new job somewhere else. They're like, oh my God, look, I actually did it. And I can now talk about it and I can lead this transformation at your company.
right. But actually, come to think of it, now that I think about the people who did leave, I think the people who stayed were the people who were the maintainers of the old one. So technically, everybody was on the rewrite because you had to split the team. Some people were doing maintenance on the old system, some
Right.
people were doing the new one. The
Team
people who worked
maintenance
on the new
survived.
one, those people left. The team maintenance people survived. They stayed. Yeah.
Right. I think we did an episode on Beyond Team Maintenance.
Mhm.
That sounds familiar. Yes. Everyone involved, not everyone, but most of the people involved in the rewrite are probably going to leave. And the people who approved the rewrite are probably also going to get pushed out because
Yep.
it's a monumental fail or it succeeded in some marginal way. And then you lost your team anyway. Like it's a
Oof,
huge
yeah.
management fail.
Yep.
And so if you're smart and cynical, you approve the rewrite. And before you realize you're stuck in quicksand, that's when you go get a new job, talking about your transformation chops.
Gosh. Let's not give people that advice. That's
Yes,
bad.
it's terrible. I have seen that happen, which is why it occurs to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I'm a transformation expert.
All right. Are there any other aspects of the trap, or should we go back, summarize real quick?
I guess we'll go back and summarize.
All right. So the trap is insidious because one, you don't realize you're in it for a very long time. Uh, it's not until you're at least 2/3 of the way through the expected timeline of the project that you realize you're in the trap. Two, that plays into the sunk cost fallacy. By the time realize that you're in the trap, you've already sunk a ton of time and effort, which requires you to either admit that you were wrong or keep going. And this plays into human psychology, the sunk cost, which also plays into part three, which is the social aspect. If you try to get out of the trap, you're going to lose your people. Like the humans involved in the project are most likely going to leave if you try to get out of the trap. They're eventually going to leave anyway because you can't get out of the trap and it kills you. But trying to get out of the trap will cause the people, the developers, the staff, the people involved in the project to leave earlier. Which, again, if you are the one who can say, okay, we need to get out of this trap instead of trying to push forward, that looks bad, reflects badly on you. And you aren't going to want to do it because you aren't going to want to see your people suffer and leave. And that is why rewrites are a trap. And you should just not do a rewrite because you're going to end up in the rewrite trap.
Never rewrite.
Never rewrite. Also, The Rewrite Trap is the name of our upcoming book, which should be out soonish. We just finished draft number 2 of
Did you
3 to
rewrite the
4.
first draft?
I did not rewrite.
Or
We
did you thesis
focused.
ship it?
If VC shipped it, you approved at least 1,000 comments and changes.
I did.
There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, folks. Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.